Picture this. It's the spring of 1967, and you're standing on the polished floor of your local Chevrolet dealership in Detroit. The air smells like fresh wax and cigarette smoke. And right there in the middle of the showroom sits the car you've been dreaming about since the brochures hit the mail. A Stingray, big block, that 427 badge sitting proud on the front fender. You already know this car. You've memorized the numbers. The Tri-Power L71, 3 two-barrel carburetors, 435 horsepower. The fastest Corvette a man can walk in and buy. The salesman sees you eyeing it, and he starts his pitch, and you let him, because this is the one. This is the king. But here's the thing. There's a price to pay for that king, and it isn't just the money. The waiting list is long. Insurance companies are circling cars like this, ready to bury you in premiums. And even with all 435 of those horses, the boys running Cobras out at the strip are still handing you your hat on Sunday afternoon. So you stand there, and you think, this is as good as it gets. But what if it wasn't? What if there was another 427 on that order sheet? One the salesman wouldn't show you, one the brochure never mentioned, one Chevrolet would politely tell you to forget about. A car the company built and then pretended didn't exist. That car had a code, 3 characters, L88. The 1967 Corvette L88 was the most powerful car Chevrolet ever built in that era, and the company spent enormous effort making sure you never found out. They rated it below a slower engine. They told dealers to steer you away. And for decades, almost everybody forgot it ever rolled off the line. Stick around, because the reason they hid it is better than the car itself. To understand why a company would hide its own best product, you have to understand 1967. The muscle car war was at full boil. Ford had the Cobra and the GT40 program humiliating people on road courses. Chrysler had the Hemi, and every one of these machines was getting watched, not just by enthusiasts, but by insurance companies and government regulators who were starting to decide that maybe regular people shouldn't be allowed to buy 400 horsepower cars at all. The first wave of safety mandates was coming. Emissions rules were right behind them. The party was going to end, and everybody in Detroit knew it. Now, General Motors had an official corporate ban on factory racing that had been in place since 1957. On paper, GM did not go racing, which was a problem, because one man inside Chevrolet absolutely lived to go racing. Zora Arkus Duntov, the engineer who turned the Corvette from a soft little boulevard car into a genuine sports car. So what did Duntov do? He found the gray area. He couldn't build a race car, but he could build a production car, one that just happened to have every racing part bolted to it. There was a rule in sanctioned racing called homologation. If you wanted to run an engine in SCCAA production or the big FIA endurance events, you had to sell that engine to the public first, even just a handful. And that loophole is exactly where the L88 was born. Now, building a car this serious meant every single detail had to be right. The fuel, the tolerances, the prep work. Get one thing wrong, and the whole thing comes apart at speed. And understanding the finer details is exactly what matters. Let's talk about what was actually under that hood, because this is where it gets good. The L88 started as a 427 cubic inch big block, the same displacement as the Tri-Power L71 sitting in the showroom. But that's about where the similarity ended. Duntov's team gave it aluminum cylinder heads, a brutal solid lifter camshaft, a single huge Holley 850 CFM carburetor, and a 12.5-to-1 compression ratio. For comparison, the hottest engine the average buyer could get ran around 11-to-1. Now here's where it gets interesting. Chevrolet rated this engine at 430 horsepower. The Tri-Power L71 it sat next to, that was rated at 435. So on paper, the L88 was the weaker car, 5 horsepower down. And that, enthusiasts, was a flat-out lie. Dyno testing over the years has put the real figure somewhere between 500 and 560 horsepower in near-stock form, and north of 600 with the exhaust opened up and race fuel in the tank. Chevrolet didn't underrate this engine by accident. They did it on purpose, to keep the insurance men and the regulators looking the other way. Behind the engine sat the M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed, a transmission so loud the gears literally whined. You got positraction out back, the F41 heavy-duty suspension, and massive power-assisted disc brakes. In the right hands, on the right day, this thing would run the quarter mile in the low 11-second range. And at Le Mans, an L88 was clocked at 171.5 miles per hour down the Mulsanne Straight. That was Ferrari and Porsche territory, from a Chevy. Now here's where it gets interesting. Chevrolet rated this engine at 430 horsepower. The Tri-Power L71 it sat next to, that was rated at 435. So on paper, the L88 was the weaker car, 5 horsepower down. And that, enthusiasts, was a flat-out lie. Dyno testing over the years has put the real figure somewhere between 500 and 560 horsepower in near-stock form, and north of 600 with the exhaust opened up and race fuel in the tank. Chevrolet didn't underrate this engine by accident. They did it on purpose, to keep the insurance men and the regulators looking the other way. Behind the engine sat the M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed, a transmission so loud the gears literally whined. You got positraction out back, the F41 heavy-duty suspension, and massive power-assisted disc brakes. In the right hands, on the right day, this thing would run the quarter mile in the low 11-second range. And at Le Mans, an L88 was clocked at 171.5 miles per hour down the Mulsanne Straight. That was Ferrari and Porsche territory, from a Chevy. But now we get to the flaw. And this one is a beauty. The L88 was, by almost any honest measure, a terrible street car. That 12.5-to-1 compression ratio meant it demanded 103 octane fuel, and there was a warning label bolted right behind the shifter to remind you. You could not buy that fuel at a normal gas station. Run pump gas and you'd hammer the engine to pieces. On top of that, Chevrolet deleted the heater and defroster with a special option, and you couldn't even order a radio. No choke. And because it was built for high-speed track cooling, the thing would overheat sitting in traffic on a warm day, fouling its plugs while you crawled along. Let's be honest. This was not a car, it was a race engine that someone had been forced to disguise as a car. And that disguise is the whole reason it almost disappeared. Inside, you got almost nothing. Basic vinyl buckets, a simple gauge cluster, no creature comforts to speak of. This was a stripped, purposeful cockpit, and that was the point. From the outside, that was the genius of it. No badges screamed L88, no special stripes, no call-outs. To the untrained eye, it looked like any other big block Stingray sitting next to the much flashier, much more aspirational cars on the lot. A wolf in a very plain sheep's coat. So, how many did they sell? In 1967, Chevrolet built exactly 20 L88 Corvettes. 20, out of nearly 23,000 Corvettes that year. And it's not hard to see why. The L88 option added roughly $950 to a car that started around $4,200. So the engine package alone cost about a quarter of the whole car. Then you take away the radio, the heater, and the ability to use normal gas, and you've built something that almost no ordinary buyer would ever want. That was by design. Chevrolet didn't want you to buy it. They built just enough to make the racing legal and waved everyone else away. Why do so few survive in original form? Because racers race. They got crashed, blown up, and rebuilt. Engines got swapped when they let go. In fact, of those 20 cars from 1967, only a tiny handful are still believed to wear their original born-with engine today. So what's one worth now? Well, the secret got out. Verified 1967 L88 Corvettes have crossed the auction block for anywhere from $2 million to $3.5 million. The car nobody was supposed to know about became one of the most valuable American automobiles ever made. The L88 is one of those cars that, for years, almost nobody knew existed, overshadowed by the flashy tri-power L71 that got all the brochure glory, hidden behind a company that rated it below a slower car and told you to look the other way. A factory race car you could technically drive home, that Chevrolet swore was nothing special. So that's the L88. The Corvette General Motors pretended didn't exist. Now I want to hear from you. A lot of you were out there in the late 60s, walking those same showroom floors. Did you ever see one of these in the metal? Maybe you knew somebody who ordered one, or saw one turn up at a drag strip and wondered what on earth was making that noise. Drop it in the comments. These stories are the best part. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one, enthusiasts.